Suspension is my Triumph Bonneville's greatest weakness, so we're going to try 3 different ways of improving it for only about $100 each. First, use progressive suspension shocks from Facebook Marketplace. Second, brand new RFY shocks made in China from Amazon. And third, well, Triumph shocks from the Bonneville T100 liquid cooled that we're going to stick on my air cooled Bonneville. I'm Adrian from YouMotorcycle. Welcome to the 7th video in my series, my best mid-size retro motorcycle for me series, comparing my Triumph Bonneville 865, my Moto Guzzi V7 750, and my Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. In today's video, I'll show you everything that I tried to improve my Bonneville suspension and how it all worked out. Okay, so if you're new to the series, you're probably wondering, why would you only want to spend $100 on suspension? And that is a totally fair question. The idea for this series is to buy 3 mid-size retro motorcycles that basically the average motorcyclist can afford to buy. So I set a maximum budget of $3,650 US per motorcycle. Having the same max budget across all 3 motorcycles in the series, despite them having, different original MSRPs, different years of manufacturing, different mileages, it really evens out the playing field and lets us know what the best bang for your buck is going to be. Right now, the problem is though, I only have a maximum of $100 left in my budget to spend on this Bonneville. So let's see how far $100 can get us on rear suspension. So lucky for me, I found a pair of used progressive suspension shocks from a seller on Marketplace 10 minutes away from my house for only $90 US. These came off of a Triumph Bonneville with spoked wheels. I did a whole video a while back on the difference between spoked wheels and mag wheel Bonnevilles. Check that out. What it meant for me was the shock was about 1 centimeter longer, and that's okay because basically it lifts up the back end a little bit more, keeps the front end the same, and that tilts the steering geometry, and it actually gives a little bit more of a sharper, sportier kind of handling, and I actually personally enjoyed that. But overall, this was such a disappointment. These shocks really sucked. They were basically probably as bad as the originals they replaced. I dug through the box that it came with. What have I done wrong here? What is going on? And I found the original receipt while I was doing this, and the original receipt was dated from like 20 years ago. Who knows how many tens of thousands of kilometers were put on these shocks. So I reached out to the Marketplace guy and I was like, hey, I think maybe someone took these shocks off the bike because they were just so bad because they're 20 years old. And he said, Adrian, I'm so sorry, bring them back, I'll give you your money back. So that's what we did. If trying to get a really good pair of secondhand shocks wasn't gonna work for me, let's do the opposite and let's try and get a brand new, never used pair of really cheap shocks. Could it be possible that today's cheap Amazon shocks of 2024 are potentially better than Triumph's OEM shock from 15 years ago? It's not outside of the realm of possibility, and I got free returns, so let's try it. Installing the RFY shocks was a little trickier. These shocks are universal, they're not specifically made to my Bonneville, so you need to use some spacers in there to get it to fit right. My real suspension concerns are not at city speeds. They're that when I hit big bumps at highway speeds, I feel like that bike is like ejecting me into orbit. Okay, so what are my honest thoughts on these shocks? I'm pleasantly surprised, but what I did find was, when it came to like bottoming out, it was happening just as hard. But in terms of if I was going over bumps at high speeds, I wasn't getting launched the same way off my seat as I was in the stock suspension, so I guess they are a little bit softer. I don't know that I would really recommend this as a big improvement over stock. I put them back in the box, I shipped them back to Amazon next. Oh, but not yet, because I learned something along the way. There's a guy, I think his name is Chris. Basically, you send this guy your RFY shocks, he rebuilds them with magical stuff, and then he ships them back to you. He charges you $100 plus shipping. At this point, it's beyond the price point that I can spend in my series on this bike, or the bike will be disqualified, so I didn't do that, but maybe it's worth Googling if you're into that. Let's go on to the next thing I tried. Pause. All of my videos are aimed at helping motorcyclists, so if you want to help me out, hitting that like button lets YouTube know that other people might want to see my content, which lets me help more other riders. So yeah, please do that. Thank you so much. In 2017, Triumph made a bunch of upgrades to the Bonneville. They took it from air-cooled to liquid-cooled, and one of the other things they did was they upgraded the suspension. A lot of people agree that the suspension on the liquid-cooled Bonnevilles is just overall better than it is on my air-cooled Bonneville. And I thought, I know this new suspension still isn't fantastic, but if it's better and I can get a set of those shocks for cheap, why not try it? Why not see how much better it makes my bike? So I find a seller on Marketplace and I was like, maybe I'll make him an offer. And I thought, no, Adrian, because you have a set of liquid-cooled Bonneville shocks already. They're in your kitchen.
What are you looking for?
T100 shocks.
They're over there.
Oh yeah, right. There they are.
So I ride the Bonneville out of the house, I take those shocks off the liquid-cooled models, go to stick them on my air-cooled model, and it doesn't quite fit right. First of all, obviously the shocks are longer, which again, I'm okay with. I don't mind if it's a little bit sharper handling. That's totally cool with me. But the holes, I guess, that they would go around, I don't know what it's called, you need to fill that space in. So you're either going to need like some kind of metal insert or maybe some rubber that's made to be compressed. That's what I used in a pinch. The liquid-cooled shocks were actually good. They were not fantastic, but they were overall a step up. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. But at higher speeds, I just still wasn't happy with what I was getting. They were basically on par with the RFYs, and yeah. The Marketplace guy though, he still has his. He's willing to let them go for $50 US. So overall, I think if you had to spend $50 US for a pair of the liquid-cooled shocks to put on your air-cooled Bonneville, worth it. Worth it, but just, don't have great expectations. As I'm sure you guys know, there are a lot of really sad people who like to leave angry comments, and I'm sure they would not let me get away with making a Bonneville suspension upgrade video and not mention a company called Hagon. Hagon is probably the #1 recommended motorcycle suspension company on any British motorcycle forum, and for two good reasons. One, they actually do make good shocks, and two, they are so much damn cheaper in the UK compared to what we pay for those exact same pipes, shocks over here on this side of the ocean. For example, so almost $100 more for the exact same pair of shocks. That sucks. Now I'm not saying that they aren't worth the money. What I'm getting at is, if I didn't know everybody else was spending $100 for something more than I am, or 40% more than I am, I would be more likely to recommend it than I otherwise would. I just want to address it because it is such a common and recommended Bonneville suspension mod. It doesn't really matter for us because obviously that's more than the $100 I can spend upgrading this bike. So let's move on. So what should you do if you want to upgrade your Bonneville suspension on the cheap? Well, for starters, if you're not sure of the history of the bike that the used shocks are coming from, don't buy really old suspension. If you did want to try the RFYs, you might want to be looking up that Chris guy. But again, by the time you are paying him to rebuild those shocks and shipping them back to you, you're kind of getting close to that price point where you could buy a set of Hagons if you did want to. And if you are super cheap and you just want the absolute cheapest upgrade you can do, $50 for a set of liquid-cooled Bonneville shocks, I think it's a good deal. I think that's where the value is. If you're fine with the stock suspension, that's great. But if you're the type who I really want good suspension, I don't know that this is enough of a step up. If you really love your Bonneville, if you really want to upgrade your suspension, if you plan on keeping this bike for a long time, and if you aren't limited to $100 for your suspension upgrade, you might just want to spend a little bit more money and get yourself a proper suspension setup that you'll be happy with for a really long time. So that was episode 7 of the series. Episode 8 will be focused on my theft recovery Moto Guzzi V7. I've gotten a lot of maintenance, a lot of service, a lot of aesthetic upgrades to bring it back to some of its former glory. Episode 9 after that will be looking at how the Triumph Bonneville on the road compares to the Moto Guzzi V7 and my thoughts and feelings towards each one. And episode 10 will be the final one where ultimately I give you an overview and then finally pick my best mid-size retro motorcycle for me. Hit subscribe if you want to see that. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, if you found it interesting, helpful, whatever, hitting that like button actually does so much to help my channel out. Please do that. Thank you so much. Ride safe, but have fun. Peace.